Yo, what it is, with the best podcast in Long Beach, California, Tacos and Work, as you already know. Look, man, I'm so excited for today's guest. This is a podcast in the making for me. I've been waiting 2 years to have him. I'm so honored, to have Carlos Carrasco right here from Blood In, Blood Out, Popeye himself.
I'm very happy to be here. Yeah.
Wow, I'm honored. I'm honored. Look, man, I love you, man. I love your work. I've been watching you for over 30 years.
I,
And it doesn't even seem like it's been that long. But before we talk about that, I want to give the man his credit. Look, he's very super talented. A lot of us know him from watching him in Blood and Blood Out. We recognize him in the movie Speed. But he has 76 actor credits, six directorial credits, and five producer credits. But more importantly, he's the only man to be able to walk away from La Onda and live to talk about it.
yes, I guess that's true, and I'm happy for it because it leaves the future open.
How was that like making that movie way back when?
Oh my God, it was well, it was very exciting. It was very intense, but there was a lot of joy in it too. I mean, I loved working with Taylor Hackford, the director, and Jimmy Baca, the writer, two really talented men. In fact, whenever I have the opportunity, I always stick in a plug for Jimmy because Jimmy is a poet and he is a published poet. He has at least 7 or 8 books of poetry out. And Taylor brought him on board because he was not happy with the working script that he originally started with. He felt that it was missing soul, and it was missing the authenticity and stuff. And he wanted a different voice. So he was asking around about writers, and he was steered towards Jimmy. Jimmy is a fascinating story, and Taylor talked with Jimmy. Jimmy was like, "I'm not a screenwriter," whatever. He says, "Don't worry, we're going to collaborate and everything." So Jimmy Baca came on board, and he basically had the last pass on the screenplay, and he injected, I think, what people have been reacting to for so many years about that film. He put in the soul, he put in the authenticity, and he put in the language, which was pretty exotic to us, the cast members. And it was so funny because Taylor convinced Jimmy that he needed to be on board during the shooting and everything like that. Um, some of which was a little difficult for Jimmy because Jimmy did, and I'm not talking revealing any secrets or anything because Jimmy has an autobiography out and he's discussed his past as well, which is that he had a wild and crazy youth and ended up in prison doing hard time because of it. Um, he talks about it, and he talks about actually really interesting how he really first learned how to write in prison. Somebody, one of these people that visits, brought him a Bible one time and left it with him. Said, "Hey, just keep this." And he was like, "I'm tough. I'm whatever. What do I need this?" But then he took it back to his cell and started to try to read it. And on a subsequent visit with the same gentleman, he said, "Can you do me a favor? Can you give me another present?" I said, "Yeah, what do you need?" He said, "Give me a dictionary." And then Jimmy got his dictionary and he sat in his cell reading the Bible and looking up everything that he didn't quite get. And he taught himself language. And he raised his knowledge of language, and then he got infected by the writing bug and he started writing poetry in prison.
You know something that Jimmy did that kind of surprised me, and Jimmy, big shout out to you. I love your work. You did a wonderful job making writing these movies. Jimmy talks about it on the DVD. Yeah,
Mhm.
there's an extra version of it. He talks about it. So you're right. He did mention
Yeah.
that he had been to prison. But one of the cool things that he did with his writing is that you care about every single character in the movie.
hmm
Every single character could actually have their own movie.
That is kind of true. Yes, it is, because they're so fascinating. You get so wrapped up in them that you go, "Oh, well, where did he come from? And what did this?" So it's true. It's true. The one thing I wanted to say about Jimmy is that he put in all that crazy language that even we, the cast, as we were shooting, we were so happy that he was there because, we'd get to a scene and go, "Jimmy, Jimmy, come here. What is chon chon?" What are wolf tickets? And all of those expressions that makes the movie so much of what it is. That came from Jimmy. So I always do my shout out to Jimmy the author.
And I'm glad you bring that up because I was going to ask you that question right now. Was give me that chonchon? Was that ad lib or that was all Jimmy?
That was a line of dialogue written by Jimmy, which I had no idea what it meant.
I've never heard the word chonchon until I saw the movie. I know what it meant when as soon as they said it, like, oh, obviously I pick up what he's saying.
Right.
But that has to be like one of the best lines in like history of all cinema. I actually lost my virginity like that. I walked up to my girlfriend in high school and I said, "Give me some chonchon."
Oh my God. And it
No,
worked.
no, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Okay, all right.
But me and my friends always play around. We're like, "Hey, give me that choncho." It's a great meme. You've gone viral so many different times with the character of Popeye that you've done. How did you develop that character? Because you have the script, right? But you're saying the words, but a lot of the interpretation of the character has to come through you. So how did you develop that Popeye character?
Well, I have had this conversation before. Okay, full disclosure, I was trained as a classical actor. I did a bunch of Shakespeare and Moliere and all that kind of stuff. And in part of exploring that, how do you do that material? How do you, because it's a lot of words and it's a lot of poetry and and some of it is like, what does this mean? I worked one time with a company called Shakespeare and Company in Massachusetts doing Shakespeare. And one of the key instructors in that company, they were a very interesting company because a lot of theater companies hire people to come in and do a play. And then when the play is over, everybody says goodbye. And everybody brings their own approach and their own way of working to the situation. Shakespeare and Company believes in a European model where you have a company of actors that train together, you know, and it develop the same approach to the material and stuff by training together. And then they go and do the productions and stuff like that. And one of the founding members of Shakespeare and Company was a woman named Kristen Linklater. She has a book called Freeing the Natural Voice. And Kristen is primarily God bless her, may she rest in peace. And she had developed a theory about the approach to language and performing language. This sounds a little esoteric, but I'm getting back to your question about Popeye. Because working with Kristen revealed to me a way of approaching material that I have since adopted and used in everything I do. Kristen believed that all of the information you need for a character and for interpretation and everything is embedded in the sound of the words, and so what the actor's job is to train themselves, train their body, train their breathing, to then be able to become a vessel, like an empty jar into which you literally drop in the sounds of what you are performing, and the vibration that they create will reveal the truth of the character, of the situation, et cetera, et cetera. This sounds really weird, but it's how I approach everything, is through the language, through the sounds of the words. I had a conversation with Jimmy about this several years later after the film, because he asked me the same question. He said, "How did you come up with your interpretation of Popeye?" And I said right back to him, "How did you come up with the words that you wrote?" Because he's a poet. And I explained this situation to him, that the way I look for the truth in anything, if I'm reading a poem, or if I'm playing a character, is to get into the language and the vibrations of the sounds. When I was given the role of Popeye, I had no idea. I was I'm from Panama. I'm from Central America. And like I said, I had a long history. I went to college for a long time, and then I started in New York, and I did the New York actor thing and everything. By the time I moved to L.A. In 1990, I had already started working and doing all kinds of different characters, and then I got called in to do this, and I got the part, but I had no idea of, well, first of all, the language, and I had very little knowledge of Chicano culture, of the whole East LA growing up and the experience and all of that. So, and of course, not prisons and stuff. So, all of that was alien to me, but I fell back on this approach. It's like, okay, fine, let's get into the language. Let's see what this is. Let's see how it feels in your body, when you say these lines and things like that. And it worked for me because I found a voice, and I found a voice through which to express these words using Kristen's approach, and what I did know of the whole Chicano experience and everything, which basically came down to having seen Zoot Suit, combined all these things, and something came out that resulted in Popeye.
But one thing that you mentioned was like the whole prison aspect. The movie is actually filmed in an actual live prison,
San Quentin, bro.
and it was like you were surrounded by a whole bunch of inmates,
Hmm.
and I think there were only like a few actors and the crew,
Hmm.
but you were there the whole time. How was that like?
Wow, that was the most intense part of the shooting. I mean, that was something. Once we left the prison and got into the streets and stuff like that, it was a whole different experience, But the prison thing was very intense. So many stories about the prison. First of all, it was really interesting because once it was confirmed that we were going to shoot in San Quentin and everything, all these different rules and regulations came down, including they took us all up for a prep session, meeting the corrections officers and the warden and all that stuff. We got our first view of Quentin and what it's like in there and the yard, In fact, I remember, I'll never forget, the first time they took us out on a balcony and we could see the whole yard. And there was the reality spread out in front of you because literally there were the different groups. Each had their turf, and each had their own workout equipment. I mean, so literally you saw the white guys over there in one section doing the stuff, and the black guys over there, and the Latinos and Hispanics over there. And the most curious thing was that right in the middle of the yard, there was a fenced off little section, and there was some smoke trailing out of a little building in there. And we said, well, what is that? And he said, that is the Native American
Oh,
turf because they sued the state, for sacred land, and they conceded to them. So in the middle of all of this universe of white guys over here, really the BGA, the Aryan brother, you see it as soon as you step into the yard, and there were the Native Americans in the middle.
so the Native American inmates had their own little.
They had their own little section right in the middle of the exercise yard, where they had like what do they call it? A smoke hut, and they would do their ceremonies in there and everything. But it was kind of funny because as part of the prep for being in there, we were lectured by the corrections people and everything, and they said, "Okay, now you gotta understand something. They don't call them cons for no reason. It's because they have all the time in the world and they spend their time in here dreaming up things, ways to con you and stuff. So, you stay away from them. Do not talk to them. Don't give them anything. But we got this whole long list of things to do. And then we get there for the first day of shooting, and we're surrounded by them. The first thing we shot in San Quentin was that dining hall scene, where Miklo comes in and stuff like that. And everybody that you see in that scene in the background, those were all real inmates, and they're in there. And we're packed together there. And making movies is about a lot of hurry up and wait. while they're setting or adjusting the light or this or moving the camera or whatever. And then you're standing there. And then all these guys start crowding around you and stuff. Hey, bro, what you doing? Hey, man, you got a cigarette and stuff like that. And like we were told not to talk to them. What are you going to do when 20 guys are around you, and they're, whatever. And it's like, I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to talk to you guys. So, what are you going to do?
I would have been like, here, have the pack. Just don't hurt
like,
me.
I give up. No, but
Whatever you need. I got it.
Yeah,
Extra sandwich, whatever. I'll give it to you.
Oh, sandwich is a funny story about there are so many stories about the prison. There really are. But you said sandwiches. Okay. What happened is that Taylor wanted to have all these guys, real guys, so they put out a notice in the prison that say, hey, we're seeing people, we're recruiting people who want to sign up, They were after 500 to have 500 guys as extras. So they had mobs showing up to do work in the movie, because one of the other things that we learned talking to the corrections guys is that one of the most precious things to have when you're inside is a job, as in working in the laundry, working in the kitchen, doing library stuff. So you have something to do, because the usual day for a convict in San Quentin is that you get up in the morning, and you have your breakfast and stuff like that, and you do your morning thing. After breakfast, if you do not have something to go do, like a job or something, you have two choices of what to do until the next meal. One is to go and get locked up in your cell again, or go out in the yard. And that's why they're always out there exercising and stuff like that, because the alternative is to be locked up in the prison, So that was very important to them. So we got this mob of volunteers that wanted to be in the film. And they selected whatever, they weeded out the axe murderers and stuff like that, And so we had these guys. On the first day of shooting, we come to the set and we see them all lined up against the wall, all these convicts, and they're all holding a little brown paper bag, which we found out was their lunch that the prison had provided for them. You said sandwich, because in the little paper bag, there was like a bologna sandwich and an apple or something like that. And that was their lunch. Well, lunchtime rolls around and they see us going to lunch. And like you do in feature films, there's a catering crew, there's a kitchen, truck and whatever, and they're serving hot food, and these guys are seeing that. Oh my God, they're eating steak, they're eating lobster. Oh geez, oh well, So, and then we have a bologna sandwich in a paper bag, So about 3 or 4 days into the shooting, they went on strike, because they're not stupid. And they really quickly caught on that when you're shooting a movie, it takes a while, and there's different setups and things like that. But there's a very important thing in filmmaking called continuity, which means that there are people in charge of taking Polaroids all the time and stuff like that, so that when you come back to a scene, they know that, okay, that bottle was there and that thing was there and he was wearing this and he was wearing that, and the guy behind him was had a bandana on. And they realized they copped to the concept of continuity right away. So they knew that if they refused to show up, the director was up the creek, because he can't keep shooting the scene unless he has the guy behind, that was there before when they started the scene, and so forth and so on. And so once you're halfway into shooting something, you kind of are a prisoner of the talent, because then you need to come back. So these guys said, well, we want Hollywood food or we're not working.
Wow.
Oh, well, blah, 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 negotiate, the warden, to this, to that, and the other. And you know what? They won.
Of course. Of course.
So the production had to bring in a second food truck, put it something for them. So the heck with the sandwiches. They got,
Sandwiches go out the window.
yeah, they got Hollywood food.
Like, hey, where's my pork chop?
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Yeah, a bologna sandwich, I want a pork chop. No, so that was feed. That I mean, there was just so many stories about it. It was interesting, um, because of the other things that happened, and for me, I think for all of us, the experience of being in there in a working prison, in a real live prison, surrounded by the guys, it was very, very intense. Just getting in there every day involved going through all the security checks and all of the doors that locked behind you and so forth and so on. And it was really intimidating.
Yeah.
It was like, oh my God, where am I? How do I get back out of here? It was interesting. The thing that struck me the most, once you're in the prison environment and you see their daily life, was the noise. I just was not prepared because they never shut up. It's constant people yelling and shouting and calling out and stuff, crying, whatever. You hear screams, and because you had 5,000 men locked up in this facility, and that was actually over the limit of what should have been in there. And they're yelling, they're screaming, they're hitting the bars, they're so, and it is so loud. It's like being at the end of a runway in an airport and stuff. And it's like, my God, I thought, how do you stand this? How do you stand this? Day after day after day. Just the level of noise was really pretty intense.
And you guys filmed the prison scene and took about a month and a half, right?
Yeah.
5 weeks, 5 to 6 weeks
Yeah,
to be in
yeah,
there.
yeah. I was lucky because I got paroled.
Let's talk a little bit more about your character because everybody loves your character. But and one of the questions that people asked me to ask you was, that Popeye ever get Miklos chon chon? I don't think he did. I never saw it in the movie.
Didn't happen.
It never happened.
Didn't happen. Wiener Montana came in and he put a stop to
He
that.
put a stop to that.
Whatever. And so it's like, okay, fine, you got it. You got it.
Yeah, Popeye was a little bit of a player, and you're also famous for wearing the red tarantarans, man.
Chones.
The chones. Do you get like a lot of people like wanting to get your autograph and the chon? And then you get to keep those chones.
No, I didn't get.
Oh,
I don't
okay.
have the original chones, but it's really funny because I do meet and greets and stuff like that, and a lot in the Southwest and so forth, and people come with the strangest requests, and I started to get asked for the chones. And I'm like, and then I was doing a meet and greet, I think in Arizona, Tucson or someplace. Yeah, it was Tucson. And a fella came in and he had made his chones. He brought in a set of red chones and he had put a photograph of Popeye on there and everything. And he gave it to me to sign. And I said, okay, well, that does it. I mean, that really convinced me. So I now have the chones as merchandise, and when you come to one of my meet and greets, you can buy your own chones, and I autograph them and stuff like that. And it's a popular item.
Don't tempt me with those. I wear them every day, running around my house, chasing up after my girl, telling her, give me that chon chon.
Yeah, and it's funny because how many people say that, no, they want to wear them, because when we created them, we were thinking, okay, it's like a memento or something, something that you could frame it and put it on the wall and stuff. And so we only made them in one size, But then people started, do you have it in small? Do you have it in extra? It's just a thing, But people want to wear them and stuff like that. Yeah, so maybe one day we'll get into the sizing because there's only one size. But I told you, I mentioned a little while before we were on the air that a few years ago, some comics got together and did a roast of Popeye, and just as a present, we brought a bunch of chones and gave them to them. And one of the comics was a fellow, a very funny comedian named Concrete. And when it was his turn to do his roast thing, he got up and then he started to take his clothes off. And I go, what is he doing? What is that? And he literally stripped in front of the audience, and he was wearing the chones.
I know concrete.
Oh yeah, and well, he stopped the show with that, man, and then he went on and he did his whole routine, his roast of Popeye in the chones, and that's kind of fun, But yeah, it's funny because you never know what's gonna become a meme material and stuff like that, and between the chon chon and the red chones, Taylor asked me if I'd do the scene in my underwear, and I said, "Well, let's go for it." In for a penny, in for a pound, and that turned into a meme.
Yeah, your character stole the scene, and every scene in that movie, he stole the scene.
Oh my
And
God, thank you. That's very flattering.
yeah, and you know what? This is my interpretation of the character. For whoever has never watched Blood and Blood Out, the first time you watch Blood and Blood Out, you look at Popeye and you're like, I hate that guy.
Yeah,
The second time you're like, I kind of like him. The third time, because I watched it like so many different times,
yeah.
right? I lost count already. But by like the third time, you're like, I love that guy. And then you start everybody, and you get this a lot, so I'm not gonna do it. Everybody always tries to do your voice.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's the voice
It's
that came out.
Yeah, so it's iconic. So it's like the three things that you're known for, right? Give me the chon chon, the underwear, and then that iconic voice, man.
It's interesting to hear you say that because, honest to God, full disclosure, the first time I read the script, I hated that character. I had the same reaction. I'm like, what? This is a scum. What are you asking me to play here? I didn't want to do it. And then I read it again and I thought, well, it's kind of interesting, whatever. And then the offer came, and it was like a really spectacular offer. Because I'm sure you know by now that the original intention was to do two films.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, you did not know that?
No, I hear a lot of hearsay, so I kind of, but hearing it from you, so there was two films that were planned to be in the making.
Yes, I signed a contract for two films. We all did, because that was the intention. There was going to be a part two. Um, Unfortunately, part two got chucked because of the initial reception that the film got, which I'm sure you've probably heard this story was, quite negative. The film literally bombed when it opened. $30 million film that made something like 5 million the first weekend, and that's how Hollywood judges films now, whether they're worth supporting or not. Something that cost that much and made so little on its opening weekend in Hollywood land is not worth supporting. So right away, many things got canceled, including part two, except because if you have something that on its first test is a complete loser, why would you invest the money to make a follow up? So part two withered on the vine. In fact, you can tell because that there was going to be more, like especially with in my case with Popeye. The last time you see Popeye is when he does the thing on the phone booth, and then he hangs up and he walks off into the distance, and it's like, what happened to Popeye?
Yeah.
Well, in conversations with Jimmy, he told me he had a whole thing, set a whole storyline for part two between Popeye and Miklo. There's a competition thing there and whatever. Anyway, it just never happened. It just never happened. But yes, there was going to be a part two.
I hope you're enjoying these episodes as much as we enjoy making these episodes for you. Believe it or not, we're not monetized. That's right, we're not monetized, which means we don't make any money from YouTube at all whatsoever. In order to continue making these episodes, we need your help. Please make a contribution to our Cash App or our Venmo. And believe me, it's greatly appreciated. And you know what? Since that never happened, you know what? There's been talks throughout the community, not through Hollywood, but everyone, on social media. They should make a part two. Why don't they make another one? And the way I look at it, this is my personal opinion. You don't mess with the masterpiece. It's like it's there, like it's close to perfection as it ever is gonna be. And I don't think at this point in the game, I don't think they would do it any service by making a second part to it.
Yes, differing opinions. I agree with you on part of it. Because and especially like I go to the meet and greets and stuff, and people that's a constant question. It's like, when is part two? When are you gonna? I heard part two is coming out. And now with AI, you see all these posters circulating on social media about Blood and Blood 2, with Damien and with Ben and stuff like that. That's all. That's all
Fake news.
fake news. Um, Now the thing is like I will say after I'll say a little, can't say a lot. Um, After all these years, again because the movie was so sort of like dropped by the studio. It was orphaned as well. It never really got any more push from the studio, even after the video came out, and it never even made it to streaming platforms. Like HBO or Prime. Nobody picked it up. Whereas some of the other films from that era, because it was kind of like a little golden era of Chicano themed and Latino films that all kind of happened in the same decade. I'm talking about American Me, Mi Vida Loca, Mi Familia, all that. And they all kind of like had an afterlife. Blood In, Blood Out just went into the trunk and got locked until recently. We commemorated the 30th anniversary of the film a couple of years ago. There's a lot of stories about that commemoration, including the fact that Taylor, Jimmy, and the original artist, Adan, and the set photographer collaborated on a huge coffee table book. I don't know if you've seen the book.
No, I haven't.
Okay, look it up. It's on Amazon. It's a big, huge, weighs 50 pounds coffee table book with the prose, the descriptions and stuff. Taylor wrote. Taylor basically wrote the bed of the book. It takes you backstage with set photography from Merrick Morton. You get a lot of behind the scenes look. Jimmy wrote new poetry for the book, so it's interspersed with poems by Jimmy. And Adan Hernandez, who was the real artist, who created all of the when Crucito is in his studio and he's painting and all these masterpieces and stuff. Well, Crucito is a marvelous actor, great guy, but he's not a painter. So Adan Hernandez was the guy that did the painting and also coached, Crucito on techniques and things like that. And Adan created brand new artwork for the book. So if you find that book, which is now a collector's item, and we've had a couple of sessions where we got the whole cast together when the book was first released. We did a release get together meet and greet at Cal State, and we had signings and stuff like that to get autographs of all the cast was there. It's a great book that happened. What was your original question?
Oh, we were talking about the whether the movie should get made again, and you said that
Okay,
it was
well, in the fervor and all of the commemoration of the 30th anniversary and stuff like that, several interesting things happened. One of which was there was so much grassroots behind the movie and everything that the studio finally sort of started to pay attention to that, and the film finally got picked up, and it's been on Hulu for about a year now. First streaming for the film ever. And Hulu was streaming both versions, the English and the Spanish version. Now, recently, I've noticed that the film now is also on Amazon Prime, so you can see it. It's finally reached platforms. Now, when Hulu ran it, they were surprised at the numbers. It's just like the viewership was huge, and it actually, I believe, hit number one on Hulu. A couple of weeks and stuff, and that kind of made sort of an awakening or whatever among the executives and stuff, and they said, "Oh, we really like this, and maybe we could do something further." So, and that's as far as I'll go. That there has been conversation, there are things, whatever. I even got a call from Taylor. It said, "Well, how you doing? What are you doing?" And he started to explain a little bit of this to me, and I'm like, "Taylor, that's ridiculous. Everybody's so old now, whatever." But they're talking. They're
Well,
talking.
wow, that's amazing to hear. And I said what I said like a couple minutes ago, but I didn't finish my train of thought. I definitely feel that it should not be done, right? Unless you have the original director, the original writer, and the original cast. With the exception of that, then yes, I do see them making one because you have the right recipe to the pie,
Mhm.
right? If by any means anybody says, okay, we're gonna grab this, but we're gonna use a different writer, a different director, and we're gonna tweak the cast a little bit, it would not work.
Yeah, I agree with you.
And
I agree with you. However, the situation we're discussing here is as you have described it, original director, original writer, and again, this is way, 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 way premature. I mean, it's like it's not a reality yet, but it's been talked about.
so, like, my feelings behind the film, right? I feel that they didn't get like enough push when it first came out. I used to watch all my movies in East LA at the Pacific Commerce right there on Whittier, right? I used to like go on a Saturday morning, right? 12, and then I would watch like 4 or 5 movies, sneak into all of them, right?
Mm,
And yeah, it was, this Madroso kids, man.
yeah.
Everybody from the neighborhood would go, right? But we would watch all the movies. That's where I watched American Me, and I learned a lot, right? When this film came out, I think it was only like limited release. It didn't get that strong push that it should have, right? I do remember watching the trailer, right, with that really good voice guy. I don't think he's no longer with us, but when I watched the trailer, like I want to watch that movie. But for as much as I would go to the movie theaters, I don't remember watching it in the theaters because maybe limited release or
Well,
something.
you know the story of what happened, right? Okay. Um, okay. We shot the movie at the same time that American Me was being shot. I mean, the movies were literally on parallel tracks. In fact, we would go to certain locations and the people, the locals, which often provided security and stuff like that, would say, "Oh, yeah, that other film, man, they were here last week," and stuff like that. So the two movies were literally tripping over each other. Um, and then they kind of wrapped at the same time. They both were finished around the same time. What happened is that my dear Mr. Hackford, I love the man. He is a perfectionist and he wanted to get certain things just right, and he had shot when we first started working on the movie and they handed out the scripts. I remember the first reading. We sit around the table and you read it, and they're handing out the screenplays, and it was like the phone book, and you're like, oh, I mean, it was over 200 pages or so. A typical length of a screenplay, Hollywood, for a 2-hour movie or something, is anywhere between 90 and 110 pages. So we're sitting there with the phone book, and we're like, oh, well, this is massive. Well, surely they're going to be cutting this stuff and everything. And we read this whole thing, and it was fascinating. When we go to shoot the film, Taylor is shooting the phone book. He did. He shot that entire thing, and then it came down. His first rough cut that he handed to the studio was 4 hours and 45 minutes long. I was like, oh, so of course, right away they said, dude, this cannot be. This cannot be. We want a 2-hour movie. And he says, no, that is impossible. It's got to be at least 3 hours. And then they started to go back and forth. And what happened is that they tested it. They would do a 2-hour version and test it someplace and take lots of notes and stuff like that. And then they would do a 3-hour version and test it and do notes and stuff like that. In fact, and this went on for pretty much a whole year. Meanwhile, the other movie, American Me, for example, it got finished, it got edited, it got released, it went into the theaters, it got reviews and stuff like that. We were still doing post production for literally a year because they would cut a version. Now, what happens when you take 4 hours and 45 minutes and you try to compress it into 2 hours? A lot of stuff gets left out. Important stuff like exposition, like, okay, who is this? Where did that come? What happened and stuff? So they kept bringing us back in to find ways to add lines here and there, to make things clearer, and it kind of got funny for a while, because they would bring us in to dub, like, say, the 2 hour version. And I remember you'd go in and they go, okay, here's what we're going to do. Look, here's this scene, because they show you this scene and they go, okay, now you see this shot here where what we see is the back of your head. Well, when we get to the back of your head, you're going to say these lines, like, hey, where did you get the guns in the first place? Something like that, just to clarify, just to put in the exposition, because otherwise it just makes no sense. So we kept going back in to re-record dialogue, and among the cast, we started joking around that the name of the movie should be Year In, Year Out, because when is this thing going to be done? Well, it finally got done, and somewhere in there, they also shot because I said, the movie doesn't wrap up, really. But then they wrote that final scene of the movie, which is a wonderful scene, which is kind of meant, and it was set like after the events, when Paco gets together with, Crucito on the river and stuff, and they kind of tie the thing together, and you have an ending for the movie. That last scene got shot a year later, after, everything else was in the can and everything, and we'd done the post-production and all this game of editing this version, that version, and the other. They finally created that final scene as a way to button the thing and close the movie.
How long did actually filming take place? Because I heard somewhere that it took 2 years to get filmed. Is that accurate?
No, no. I couldn't give you an exact a number of months, but I think we shot for about 4 months, originally, to create that 4 hour and 45-minute version. The only additional shooting really was that last scene that got shot. About a year later, after principal photography was done, So it wasn't the length of the filming that delayed the movie. It was the post production. The post production went on and on and on and on and on. Now, what is the problem? During that year of post production, first American Me came out and everything like that. So everybody said, okay, well, we've had our Chicano Gang movie and stuff. But more importantly, L.A. went into upheaval because of the Rodney King trial and the Rodney King riots that followed that trial, when the policemen were all exonerated and everything, and the city of Los Angeles blew up. It was on fire, literally. I mean, the Rodney King riots were amazing because they spread throughout the whole city. So what happens? What does that do in the political climate? And you have this movie, which has the gang themes and all that sort of thing and everything, and the studio got really worried. They really got, freaked out. And they said, and then the movie was ready for release. As you say, the trailers had come out. There was interest. Where is it coming? Where is it coming from? And the studio became very unsure about, what are we going to do with this thing? Primarily because they were concerned. There had been incidents in test screenings of the movies where sort of pushing and shoving and stuff happened in the theaters, because, the guys with the red bandanas didn't like that the blue bandanas were there and stuff. And there were actually incidents of violence at some of the test screenings. That was enough to make the studio very, very, very nervous about releasing this movie and broadcasting it and publicizing it in the environment that had been created by the riots. Literally, they did not want to be responsible for restarting the LA riots. So the movie went in, it got paused. Then somebody in marketing decided that the problem was the title. because blood, blah, 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 blah. Oh, no, no, no. What you got to do is change the branding, change the title, and then all your problems will go away. That is why the movie has two titles, and they rebranded it as Bound by Honor, and created a new poster with a rose on it with thorns and stuff like that. And then the Bound by Honor that was rebranded, but there was very, very little marketing push behind the new title. And eventually, it finally got its theatrical release, and actually, it did open wide. It opened on about 2,000 screens around the country, you know. But then it opened as Bound by Honor 2 weeks before Terminator 2.
Oh,
And first of all, I think people didn't know what is Bound by Honor because they're waiting for Blood In, Blood Out.
yeah.
Okay? So, net, nobody came. It
Wow.
just bombed. Like I said at the beginning, it's like a $30 million movie, $5 million first weekend. It's a flop.
But you know what? I don't know the numbers, but my belief is that this movie has probably made more money off of like DVD sales and VHS
Sales,
sales than it probably did on, because I mean, everybody in the neighborhood, like in East LA, knows it. Everybody could quote you a line. As a matter of fact, I used to work in a warehouse,
Mm.
and you know what we used to do all day? We used to just talk about. I kid you not. We used to talk all day about blood in, blood out, and we would do the quotes and then do the voices, and then we'd be like, okay, and then we would have to say what scene it was,
Okay.
and we would talk about Big Al, and it was a riot, man. That working at that warehouse was awesome. Not too long ago, but everybody knows it, and I've seen even people in Dubai doing the quotes on TikTok,
Oh yeah.
and then I'm like, whoa, it's like completely global. But you had an experience recently, right, where they made a mural of you or the cast?
Yes, yes. There is a mural in Mexico, in Leon, Mexico, that a group of local artists got together, about 7 or 8 of them, and they have created this insane mural, in Leon, that's become kind of a landmark now. And it's all of the cast, all of the main characters of Blood In, Blood Out, in this enormously huge mural. You have a picture of it, I see.
There you are.
Yeah, there's Popeye. Yeah, look at that, because it literally wraps around this building. What you're showing here is one wall, one side of the building, but then you get to the corner and you realize, oh, it goes on, and so there's a whole other side of it, with more like local scenes, of East Los and stuff like that. That is an amazing piece of work, and it was done by this group of artists. And now what they're doing down there is they're raising money to bring. Their goal is to bring as many of the cast members as possible to have them sign the thing. And so I was brought down there this past year to sign, my Popeye, and I think Magic Mike has been there, Miklo has been there. They're trying to get as many people.
Oh, you mean Magic?
Yeah, Magic. Big time.
I'm on Magic Mike. That's Channing Tatum. No,
Yeah,
Magic.
yeah. No. Yeah, Alzheimer's. Yeah. But he's been there, and a few other people, and they're trying to get everybody's signature on that mural. It's pretty impressive, and that these local guys just got together and did it. Because to your point about working in the warehouse and stuff like that, it's really, really amazing, the grassroots support and fan base for this thing. It's huge. It's huge. I think it's done a lot for just, again, the fact that once the Hulu people ran it and they went, oh my God, who are all these people watching this thing? It's kind of an illustration of this community and the power that it has and the fervor that it has. I can't tell you enough about experiences that I've had at meet and greets and meeting people. I do I do cameos. You know cameo? You know about cameo?
Yes, it's kind of like where the celebrity tells you,
Yeah.
"Hey, you know what? My dad's turning 52. Can you give him a happy birthday?"
Yeah, yeah, you do greetings. People send in and can you do this? Happy a lot of it is birthdays and some of it is pep talks and stuff like that. And I got a request one time from some fellow in Nebraska, you know. And his thing, what he was saying is that, hey, we have I was in college, and with a fraternity, and you realize, oh, these are all white guys. He said they get together every year, I think at Thanksgiving, Christmas or something, and they do blood in, blood out scenes, and they all have a character. They've each decided you're this guy, you're that guy, and he was telling me I'm Popeye. and these guys, some fraternity guys, and they get together and do kind of what you guys are doing in the warehouse. They're doing the lines and they're doing this and that and the other. I can't imagine. But to your point about global, you are right. I have been stopped in different countries, different places around the world, to go like, "Oh, you're Popeye. What are you doing here?" and stuff like that. And I've had that happen in Peru, in Mexico. I was shooting another film once in Cuernavaca, and one day I just went for a walk, with one of the cast members, the local Mexican actress, and everything. We're walking around, and we were crossing a plaza in the middle of the town, and suddenly we hear a lot of horns going off and blaring, and well, what's going on? We turn around, and there was a guy running towards us, and he had left his car in the middle of the street, just stopped in the middle of the street, left the doors open, and came running over. That's what all the beeping was about. And he said, "You're Popeye. What are you doing? Can I take a picture?" And it's like, okay, cool. But the most bizarre one was in Africa. A few years ago, we went on safari, and we went to South Africa to go on a safari and stuff like that. And it was a wonderful experience. But we started in Cape Town, and we're, whatever. And for some reason, everybody in Cape Town kept telling us, like, if you go to Johannesburg, be really careful. Oh, watch your back in Johannesburg, Joburg, as they say, because there's crime there, and be careful, and you're gonna die, and it's like whatever. Um, so we finished. We did a safari in South Africa, like I said, in Cape Town, that area, and then we had a second one to go to in Botswana. So we had to catch a flight to go to Botswana, and the airport was in Johannesburg. So we left where we were, and then we got ourselves to the airport in Johannesburg just to change gates and get on the flight to Botswana. So we're walking through the airport, and by now we're terrified because everybody told us all these horrible things about Johannesburg. Much apologies to the South Africans. We had a wonderful time there, but it's just what people on the street keep saying. So we're walking through the airport in Joburg, and then I hear, "Hey, you, man, you, I'm talking to you." And I'm like, "Oh," and I turn around, and there's this really, really tall African gentleman, and he's striding towards us, and he had a turban on or whatever. So the guy looked like 8 feet tall, big, gigantic African. And he's coming to me, and he's yelling at me, and I'm like, okay. And I turned to my wife, I said, okay, well, we did die in Johannesburg, it looks like. And the guy comes right up to me. And then he breaks into a smile, and he goes, you're that American actor, aren't you? And I'm like, well, yeah. And he goes, "Oh, you Popeye." I'm like, oh yes. Because my knees stopped shaking, and I'm in great relief because, it's about Popeye and stuff. And the guy, usually wanted his picture taken and this and that and say the line and whatever. And so we did. We took care of business.
Oh man,
went to our gate. Africa.
That's so crazy.
Yeah.
There's like many versions of these movies, right? There's the theatrical trailer, which is a theatrical version on the VHS. That's my most favorite one. That's the one that I watch like at least once a month on a Saturday. drinking beers all afternoon. Because it's a long movie.
Yeah.
One time I was like 17 watching the movie, and by the time I finished, I was 18.
You are a comedian.
Yes, I try to get them in there.
Oh, but I'm pumped.
Yeah, the other version is which I watched for the very. I had this DVD for like 15 years, maybe.
Yeah.
The DVD, and I just watched it just yesterday, and it has like about 10 extra minutes that the
VHS doesn't
yeah,
have.
that the
Yeah.
VHS doesn't have, which explains a couple things more about on your character when he kind of stabs Smokey,
Yeah.
which kind of like makes sense. And then there's the that long version, and everybody makes fun of it that it's 5 hours long, right? Like, oh, the 5 hour long version. When is that one gonna come out? But so I've seen 2 out of 3. The third one I don't think I'll ever watch because I don't think it's ever gonna come out. But you know what? Everybody tells me you need to watch it in Spanish, and I'm like, I haven't ever watched it in Spanish because I love it so much in English. But people are like, if you watch it in Spanish, it's a different trip. Did you do the voice for the Spanish version? Because I know Crucito did his Spanish, but how did that dubbing work?
Well, they, you know, talked to us, all of us in the cast and everything, and said, how is your Spanish? Are you comfortable? Whatever, whatever. And some of us were, and some of us were not. So I know I did my own Spanish. Crucito did. I don't remember. I don't remember if Montana did. But several of us did dub our own parts. And it was interesting. Um, because it's interesting too, because sometimes when you go like to places like Mexico and the like, they are familiar with the Spanish version, so that when they come up and they go, mira, dime la línea, dime la cuestión, and I'm like, I don't remember. I was 30 plus years ago, but I have since, I did some research and I found like, okay, some of Popeye's lines in Spanish, and some of it is really funny. I mean, my favorite one is, let me see if I can remember. Hey, Cinderella, go find yourself a fella. It's almost midnight, whatever that line. And in Spanish, it's like, oye, Cenicienta, la carne blanca no está en venta. And I'm like, oh, that's cool.
That's really cool.
That's a cool line. And there are others through up, but I can't remember. But that one stuck with me. Oye, Cenicienta, la carne blanca no está en venta.
Now I definitely have to watch it, man. Your character's like so iconic. So listen, I brought the movies. Hopefully I could get you to sign
Oh,
both of
sure.
them.
Yeah,
It would be like an honor to have you autograph my movies there. Um, I think we're running out of time, but
Oh.
before we go, I mean, I could sit right here and talk to you all afternoon, but
I could talk forever because, as you can see, there's so many like angles and stuff to this whole thing that yeah, we could talk all afternoon.
you know what? I might have you come back and then we could talk about like acting and stuff like that because you're super talented and I know you're much more than just these movies here, but I'm sure that everybody who's watching this episode here is tuning in because we all love you. We love the work that you've done and how much you done for us watching you growing up. Like I said, I've been watching this movie for 30 years. But before we go, I like to ask this question to some of my guests. How would you like to be remembered? With your acting career and everything that you've done. Because, like I mentioned, you have 76 actorial credit, six directorial credit.
Yeah.
So your resume is huge. You've done so much, and you're also a classically trained actor. I think you've done
Yeah.
a whole bunch of plays, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's
I just
amazing.
did
But
about 4 months ago. I did a production of The Seagull by Anton Chekhov. At the Odyssey Theater here in Los Angeles, and that's the dissonance because people go, "What? You're doing Chekhov? What the heck is that?" But that's part of what I do. How would I like to be remembered? As working class actor, man, who managed to put together. This is a difficult industry, as I'm sure you realize. And I'm a survivor. I kind of made it. Um, clawed my way, hung in there and stuff, and I made it to retirement age. So now I actually have a pension that I generated by working in this business. Everybody doesn't make it that far. And as you mentioned, yeah, I have a list of credits. I'm proud of all of them. But this is a funny business. You never know really which one is going to be the one. And it just so happens that Popeye has become my sort of brand, my trademark, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that because it's opened a lot of doors. It's given me a lot of opportunities, and it's not dead yet. Right now in the works. People send me stuff all the time, and they send me suggestions. Do you want to do this? Hey, I wrote a script for you and everything, and. But this past year, somebody submitted a script for me to read, and I fell in love with it because it's about me.
That's awesome.
No, but it's about me, the actor, dealing with being known as Popeye. And it's kind of funny. It's like it's comedic, it's satirical and everything. But I just really fell in love with the script. It's for a short film, and we had a reading of it recently in East Los, and everybody that saw it was like, "Oh my God, this is amazing!" I sent the script to Taylor and Jimmy. Said, "Look, we're doing this thing," and they both replied like, "Oh my God, this is terrific! This is great! Go ahead, do this." So we are in the fundraising stage right now because movies are expensive to make, but I'm really, really jazzed about it. The film is literally called Chon Chon.
I love it.
Yeah, and we hope maybe in about 4 or 5 months to have the budget put together so we can shoot. I really want to make this movie, and so that is something to look forward to. And I like it because for me it would represent kind of like a summation of my work, my career, my life, and this oddball character that I got wedded to, and it's a great leave behind. Because you get to a certain age and you're like, oh, how do I wrap this all up? And I think it's a lovely, lovely script, and Chung Chung, the movie, and we're in the fundraising level yet. So anybody who's out there who has money to invest in a film, just let us know because we're looking for money.
Why don't we tell the people out there how to get a hold of you? You're on Instagram, right? What's your
Yeah, it's Popeye Bebo is my social media handle at Popeye Bebo, Bebo being blood in, blood out, and
okay?
and you can reach me that way.
Okay, so and anybody that wants to support you, they could support you there. Any other way they could support you? I mean, how does somebody donate or contribute to this movie?
Well, like I said, it's really early stages,
Okay.
so we haven't set up the fundraising thing. But I would be happy to come back
Yes, we have
anytime,
to do this again.
and we can talk about that. I'll bring the writer director with me, and we can seek your support.
Yeah, I would love to have you here on the best podcast in Long Beach. We gotta go, everybody. Look, I want to thank Carlos for coming and sharing his experiences throughout the movie Blood in, Blood Out. I know all of you have watched this movie many, many times, just like I have, and we're gonna continue watching it some more. You know what? He's gonna continue working as hard as he always has, and you know what? We can't wait until have him next time. But before we go, do me a huge favor, guys. Look, man, we've been at this for quite a while. We need your support as much as possible. Go ahead and give this video a like. Subscribe to the channel, drop a comment, but more importantly, share the content. And until then, we'll see you guys next time.
It's a Friday night. We don't tell her where we headed. It's a Friday night. Friday night. It's a Friday night. We don't tell her